Continuing on with the first promise of Project 2025, conservatives should gratefully celebrate the greatest pro-family win in generations, the overturning of Roe versus Wade. I think that the family of mothers who lost their lives because they could not receive health care would disagree with you. Conservatives in the states and in Washington, including the next conservative administration, should push hard as possible to protect the unborn in every jurisdiction in America. First of all, we don't protect the born. We don't protect the born. 1 in 7 children goes to bed hungry every night. The same people who are championed for fetuses inside of random uteri were also the same people who defunded free lunch programs during the pandemic. If you really are concerned about children, I would say you would probably make sure that children have access to food. But maybe that's me. The next conservative president should work with Congress to enact the most robust protections for the unborn. Does that include prenatal care? Because y'all don't pay for that either, right? We don't think that pregnant people should receive prenatal care. We have the highest maternal mortality rate of any developed country. And if mothers are not healthy during pregnancies, then babies can't be. Alternatives to abortion should receive federal funding. There we go. And I want to be super clear about my next statement on this. Adoption is not an alternative to abortion. Abortion is a decision to not remain pregnant. Adoption is a decision to not parent. And while I am a supporter of all choices, parenting, adoption, and abortion, those decisions should come from the person, their support, their physician, and not one ideological organization. Because here's the other thing. Forcing someone to remain pregnant actually isn't respecting individual rights. Forcing someone to remain pregnant is the antithesis of what this mandate purports to want to do. But hey, contradictions are all through this, as we will learn. Stay tuned. So let's just move right on along. Promise 2, dismantle the administrative state and return self-governance to the American people. Yeah, that would be great if you all would stay out of our uteruses. The surefire way to do this is to reduce its size and scope back to something resembling the original constitutional intent. Yeah, the same constitution that called people 3/5, 5/8 of a human. The same constitution that upheld slavery. Yeah, that constitution is really, really cute. Yeah, I heard about it. Conservatives desire a smaller government, yet you all can't stay out of the uteruses of unsuspecting women. You want to micromanage libraries and whatever. According to Ronald Reagan, there are no easy answers, but there are simple answers. That is not what Ronald Reagan meant, and you all know this. Okay, so here's the problem I have with a lot of this, is that they try to kind of make this seem so poetic. But it's just, again, let's get back to, this is a lot of word salad. And yeah, as I stated, I've had to upgrade my reader strength throughout the process of reading this. Okay. And then they talk about the fact that we need to go back to those old values because Congress has been taken over by the neoliberalism and the progressive wokeism. But let's kind of talk about the truth for a second. One thing that's really interesting about Project 2025 and this promise to dismantle the administrative state is it just seems like we only want to dismantle the administrative state if it doesn't benefit us. Yeah, it's like, if I'm not winning the game, I'm going to take my ball and go home, right? And one of the things that's really, really clear in this promise to dismantle the administrative state, and return self-governance to the American people is, what people are we talking about? One thing about Project 2025 that is so evident is that there's this idea that Washington is so anti-conservative, that the conservative voice is just muted in Washington. But let's kind of take a look at history over the last 30 years, starting with the Clinton administration in 1995. From 1995 until now, and we'll kind of truncate it at the current administration, the GOP held 11 chambers of Congress in the House of Representatives and 8 Senates. And of those, 7 were bicameral. So that means in the last 30 years, from Bill Clinton's administration, 1995, that's when he was inaugurated, 11 of those House chambers were led by the GOP. 8 were led by the Senate. And 7, they had control of both. So what are y'all talking about? So now that we know that the conservatives actually had control, bicameral control, that's both the House and the Senate, 7 times during the last 30 years. And if you attended 8th grade American government at some point, you know that usually these cabinets change with the new administration. So 7 of the times in the last 30 years, the Republicans, the GOP, the conservatives, had control of both chambers of Congress 7 times. They had control over the House 11 times and the Senate 8 times. Yet they want to cry about losing control. I'm sorry, that's not what they're crying about. Come on, Sasha, we got to be nice about this. They're crying about the conservatives and not having a voice, but what they're really crying about is losing control. They're crying about losing control. That's really all it is. And then they want to talk about how the Republicans were so progressive and have always been the progressive party, but they forget that little conversation in 1964 called the Southern Strategy, when the parties flipped. Yeah, about that. So as we get through the second promise, and we got some more promises because, child, there's a lot of stuff in here with a 1,000-page document, right? The first of the second promise is a combination of elected and unelected bureaucrats at the Environmental Protection Agency quietly strangles domestic energy production through difficult to understand rulemaking process. No, dear, that's called regulations. It's called regulations. And I'm sure there's some people in our southern state of Georgia who are now dealing with toxic gases, who really like the fact that the Environmental Protection Agency kind of gives a damn about regulations and emissions and dumping into waterways. I told y'all this is going to be messy. Let's keep going. They also want the bureaucrats at the Department of Homeland Security. Wait a minute. Wasn't this kind of developed under a... Never mind. The Department of Homeland Security, following the lead of a feckless administration. I don't think they wanted to say that. Under border and administration enforcement agencies to help migrants criminally enter our country with impunity. That's not happening. It's just, and the Easter Bunny shows up and Santa Claus twerks. I can say anything and make it real. It's not happening. That is absolutely not happening. Resettlement programs to help people who are fleeing war is not letting criminals into our country to... All right. It gets better. Hold on. The other thing that's promised by the Heritage Foundation is that they want to, lessen the impact of government when it doesn't impact them and they don't have the power, of course, and take it back to the people, except the people that they don't like to have power. And then they talked about the spending bill and that, and I will read this along. Party leaders negotiate a $1 multi-trillion spend. What is this? It's okay. Can we get an editor in the room for a second? Because I think that this could have been stated 100 ways, but then it is what it is. The spending bill, several thousand pages long. And then vote on it before anyone has a chance to read it. Does it sound familiar, Heritage Foundation? Does it sound familiar to you? Yeah. Does it sound familiar to you? Congressional leaders' behaviors and incentives here are no different than the global elites. Yes, we got to go and bring in the boogeyman from abroad, because anything that goes against the ideology of the Heritage Foundation has to be cosplaying the boogeyman abroad. I digress. So then they kind of scurry down and hit on a couple of agencies. And I'm going to just breeze through that because I'm going to go into the agencies because, child, listen, we got to get into these agencies. But let's just kind of start a little read along about what they think. I'm sorry, the conservatives think. Sasha, we have to remember this is the conservatives, right? Not the Heritage Foundation. We got to talk about what the Heritage Foundation thinks we need to do that.